Hi there everyone, my name's Lainey and welcome to Bread and Better blog. Today I'm going to be showing you how I make my sourdough focaccia. You can access the written recipe at breadandbetter.blog under my post section, titled No-Knead Sourdough Focaccia. Thanks for watching. To start, you're going to want to weigh out all your ingredients. I like to use a kitchen scale and measure in grams because it's more exact and consistent and you'll have a better outcome. But if you don't have a kitchen scale, no worries. I have the imperial and metric measurements written out in the recipe. You're going to want to measure your flours and salt into the largest bowl you have. The larger the better with bread. I like to use all-purpose flour and bread flour because the all-purpose I think yields a softer crumb as opposed to chewier because there's less gluten development that's happening within the all-purpose flour. The recipe calls for fine sea salt, but you can also use table salt if you don't have that. Or you can double the measurement the recipe calls for and use Diamond Crystal kosher salt. Once you have those ingredients measured out, just give it a whisk and you can set your bowl aside. Next, we're going to measure out our water, starter, and honey into a separate bowl. Doesn't have to be very big, but you are going to want your water to be around 78 degrees Fahrenheit. Usually this just feels slightly warm on your wrist if you want to measure that way. And you're going to go ahead and scoop your honey into that so that can dissolve, as well as your starter. One way to tell if your starter is ready for bread making is to take a little bit of it and place it in your bowl of water, and if it floats to the top, then it's ready to use. Then you're just going to whisk all those ingredients together until they're well dissolved and incorporated. You can now pour your liquid ingredients into your dry, and I like to mix with a silicone spatula. That's just easiest for me, but you can use anything from a wooden spoon, a bowl scraper. You can even use your hands if you're wanting to get a little messy. Sometimes that's fun, but today I wanted to keep things clean and just use my rubber spatula. I like to cover my bowl with a plate or saran wrap or a towel, and this is going to be our first rest period. It will be a total of 2 hours, but every 30 minutes we're going to perform a stretch and fold, and I will show you how to do that. Go ahead and get a bowl of water ready to set beside your bread bowl, because when we do the stretch and folds, you're going to want to wet your hands so the dough does not stick to them. Bread takes a long time to make, but it is not hands-on for the majority of it, and so the good thing about that is you can do things while it's resting, like I wash dishes. Our 30 minutes is up and we have made it to our first series of stretch and folds, so you're going to want to wet your hands, and you're going to use your hands to go underneath the dough, pull it up, and then fold it back on top of itself. You're going to turn the bowl 90 degrees, put your hands under the dough, pull up, and fold it on top of itself, and you're going to do that 4 times, and that is considered a series of stretch and folds. Once done with your 4 folds, don't forget to cover it and set your timer for another 30 minutes. I personally like to keep a notepad by my bowl to keep track of how many folds I've given, and that also helps me keep track of the time because I know for every fold it's been resting for 30 minutes. And we are moving on quickly to our second series of stretch and folds. And like I said the first time, just Scoop your hands under the dough, pull up towards the ceiling, and fold it back over on top of itself. You'll rotate the bowl, do that again 4 times, and then you're done. Set your timer for another 30 minutes. Don't forget to record that second series of folds on your notepad, and that concludes the second series of folds. Now I'm moving on into the third series. It's now been a total of an hour and a half. After this, you'll just have one more fold, and then we'll move into another period of rest where it will rest up to 1 to 2 hours, and that will be the final rest. And during that rest period, you won't do any folds. You'll just leave it covered on the counter. That's it. By the time you get to the third fold, you'll probably start seeing little bubbles like this, which is a good sign that your dough is developing and the yeast are working and flavor is developing. It's just a really good sign. So if you're seeing that, keep going. Great job. And now we are at the final series of folds. It has now been a total of 2 hours. And after completing this series of folds, we're moving in to our 1 to 2 hour bench rest time. Depending on how cold your house is, it can take 1 to 2 hours. My house was around 70 degrees this day, and it only took an hour, and it was just fine. But what you're looking for is for the dough to expand or almost double in size and get active bubbles in it. After you cover your dough, go ahead and set your timer for 1 hour and check on it after the hour is over. Now I want to take you with me on something that I did while the dough was resting, just to show you that there are so many little things you can do in between working with your dough. Yes, it can take all day to make bread, but it is not all hands-on. So you'll see me cutting up watermelon, and we're gonna go give my chickens a little treat. Something that I'm learning with bread making is it does not have to be this overwhelming task that takes up my entire day, but instead it can be something that allows me a time to pause and rest, and I can observe my dough. I can observe what it looks like, feels like. Is it producing any bubbles? Is it not? I can reflect on those facts and try to understand, okay, is it ready to move to the next stage yet? What are the signs I'm seeing? What is it telling me? And I just find this has helped me to become a better bread baker and just understand the concept of bread better and how it works, how it develops, all of those good things. Now back to the focaccia. I use a 13 by 18 inch sheet pan. No shame in measuring. I can't eyeball stuff like that, so I brought out my tape measure. This is where the tablespoon of butter comes in. What you're gonna do with the butter is just rub it all over the sheet pan. Be generous. Don't feel like you can't use all that butter, because you can. This is a technique I learned in culinary school when we made focaccia. Part of the reason we did it was because it adds a depth of flavor to the bread, and it also helps with crisping up the bottom of the crust. Once you get to the last little bit of butter, you kind of just have to smash it into the pan and do the best you can to incorporate it. And then you're going to go over with about 4 tablespoons of olive oil. You can use more or less depending on what you want to do and your preference, but I use about 4 tablespoons, and I just smear it all over the butter. By the end of this, your hands will be so oily you'll never need lotion again. It has now been a little over an hour since letting the dough rest, and it is nice and bubbly, and it's gotten bigger, and it is ready to go in the sheet pan. Go ahead and grab a bowl scraper if you have one and wet it with your bowl of water, and then just use it to scrape the dough all in one piece out onto the sheet pan. I then like to use my hands to smash it all down into the sheet pan and try to make it fit and get it flat. This can also be known as the degassing or deflating process in bread making, where you punch out all the air bubbles so that you're controlling the rate of fermentation and rise within the dough. Go ahead and set your timer for 15 minutes if you cannot get the dough to the corners of the pan. During this time, the gluten will relax so that you can stretch it further. I'm now seeing if I can just do all my dirty dishes in the time that it takes for the gluten to relax. It's been 15 minutes, so now we're just gonna re-oil the focaccia with about 1 to 2 tablespoons of oil. You're just gonna spread that all around on the surface of the dough. I'm just kind of pushing the corners out with my fingertips to try to spread it to the very corners, and you can use some of the excess oil on the corners of the pan to oil the surface of the dough. There are 2 ways to proof this dough. You can either leave it here on the counter for 1 to 2 hours and then bake it once it's puffy and risen over the edge of the pan, or you can cover it in plastic wrap and let it ferment in the fridge overnight. I usually like this option better because it develops better flavor to me, and you can keep it in the fridge for 8 to 24 hours. And that is all for day 1 of making this bread. Good morning, it is day 2 now, and I am just going to start the day by grabbing my focaccia out of the refrigerator. I'm gonna go ahead and uncover it, and the oil really helps keep the plastic wrap from sticking and tearing the dough, so I just gently pull that off the surface. Once you have the plastic wrap off, just let the dough sit on the counter for 2 to 4 hours. If your house is colder, it will take longer for the dough to rise, and if it's warmer, you will not have to let it sit out for as long. By the end of it, it should be puffy, bubbly, and expanding over the edge of the pan. After the first hour of proofing, go ahead and preheat your oven to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. As you can see, the dough is noticeably puffy, there's big bubbles on top, and it is expanding over the edge of the pan. I'm gonna go ahead and grab my toppings, which is more olive oil and flaky sea salt. I decided to keep it simple with this because I just personally like simple, and I feel like it is more versatile when you keep focaccia simple. You can use it for so many different things when there's not a lot of toppings on it, and then also there's not toppings that are distracting from the flavor of the bread and the olive oil and the nice salt in the sourdough. You're gonna just smear the oil all over the bread, make sure it is well covered. Then you can go ahead and start dimpling the bread. To do this, just take your fingertips and press all the way down through the dough till you reach the bottom of the pan. You'll start to see all these nice bubbles forming, and when you see that, that's a good sign that your bread is gonna have a really nice structure and crumb. Once you're done dimpling, you can go ahead and sprinkle with flaky sea salt, or if you've chosen to do any other toppings, go ahead and put those on, and the bread is now ready to go into the oven. We're going to bake the bread at 450 degrees Fahrenheit, rotating halfway through for 26 to 28 minutes, or until it's deep and golden brown. Here I'm just rotating the pan halfway through, and you can see it's just a light brown color, not quite ready to be taken out. Now it's been about 28 minutes and it is ready to take out. I really love a crust that is a little bit deeper in color, but if you don't want it as deep in color, you can take it out at 26 minutes. And there you have it. That is how you make my sourdough focaccia recipe. After about 15 minutes, I usually will take a wire rack and just stick it underneath the bread so that it's not sitting in any oil and the crust on the bottom doesn't get soggy. Once it's completely cool, you can go ahead and slice through it. I usually will slice it in half and then quarters so that it is small enough to fit on my cutting board. And as you can see, it has a nice airy and open hole structure. It's soft, but it's crisp on the outside. and to me, this is the perfect focaccia bread. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video or learned something from it. I really love baking and learning and trying to understand it more, and my goal for this channel is to be able to share that with others and to learn and grow together. I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and if you would like to see more like it, go ahead and like and subscribe to my channel. I hope to come out with more and more videos like this. If you have a specific bread that you would like to see me make, or you would like to know how to make, go ahead and comment that below. If you have any questions, go ahead and ask, and I will do my best to answer them. I just want to thank you so much for watching my video today, and I hope that you'll join me in learning to bake beautiful bread for a better life.